Hello and welcome to the first episode in the Java Crash Course series. We'll be covering all the Java basics in the series, and in this episode we'll cover the background of Java and also get you started coding. So to begin, just a bit of background. Java is a programming language and it's similar to Python and C++, and lots of people use Java because it's ubiquitous and it has many different applications. And additionally, it's a good pathway to help you learn Android or mobile development. So to begin, you'll need an IDE. So a common one is Eclipse, and this is just where you can easily write your code and run it and compile it. So I recommend Eclipse, but any other IDE works. And yeah, if you go to this link or if you just type in Eclipse, you should be able to find it. And make sure to download it and have Java, the newest version of Java. So any IDE will work, but I will be using Eclipse in this series. Okay, so when we get to Eclipse, so after you've downloaded it and open it, you should see this. So it'll say select a workspace. I just recommend using the default one, and then you can say use this as a default and do not ask again. And then after you launch it, when you first launch it, it might take a while to load, and that's just because it's the first time, but later on it should get quicker and quicker to open. Okay, yeah, so when you open it, it should look similar to this, and I'm just going to click X on all these tabs except for the Package Explorer one. So just to clear up space. Okay, so on the top left, it should say there are no projects in your workspace. To add a project, so what we're going to do is create a Java project, and we'll call it episode 1. And then don't worry about the settings, just click next, and then finish. And it might ask for a module info. For that, just say don't create. And then if you expand it, and you should see this src folder. If you click on it and then click File, then you go to New, and then click Class, and I'll just say hello. Okay, and then it'll ask which method stubs you would like to create. Click this one, public static void main, and click Finish. And then it should open up, and it'll give you this comment. You can just delete it. And with this, so for now, ignore this, but basically, essentially this is where we're going to be writing our code. So we're just getting set up here, Okay, so let's jump straight in, and I'd say one of the most commonly used functions in applications, or in any program, is printing something out. And that's because the computer always needs to display something or give output to the user. So for example, if you're making a website, for example in Google, you'll see the logo Google, and you'll see Gmail. So all of that is basically output that the user can see. And so one of the main functions of all programs is to print something out. So if we can do that in our own game by typing out this line of code right here. So I'm going to do that right now. And I'm just going to make this bigger so that you can see. Okay, so yeah, so inside this public static void main, type in system.out.println. So print line, basically, print ln. And then put two parentheses. And then inside that, put two quotation marks. And inside those quotation marks, type hello. And then at the very end, put a semicolon. Okay. Now, if we go to the very top, you can say click run, and then you can click run again. Or what you can do is if you find this green button and hover over it, and it should say run. And if you click that, and it asks you to save, you can just say always save resources before launching, and click OK. You'll see at the very bottom, this console will appear, and it'll say hello. So now, every time you're in this program, it'll always say hello. So it's basically the computer is giving output to us because we told it to. And you might be wondering what exactly this means, because this obviously doesn't seem familiar. System.out.println. So basically, system is basically telling the system to do something, because obviously the computer is what's like running the code. So in this case, we're telling the system, to run the code basically. And out, that basically means output, because we're giving output to the user in the form of text. And then println, it's basically telling the computer that it's basically telling the system that we're outputting something, and what we're trying to output is a new line that prints out whatever is here. So println is basically telling the system to output some text. And then these two parentheses kind of indicates what we're trying to print. So whatever we're trying to print goes inside these parentheses. And in this case, we want to print out hello. And these quotation marks basically is telling the computer that we're trying to print out text. So that's why we use quotation marks. And then at the end, we have a semicolon, and that basically tells the computer that it's the end of this line. So you can kind of think of it as like a period, like when you're writing an essay or something. A period tells the reader that it's the end of the sentence. In this case, the semicolon tells the computer that it's the end of the line. Okay, and then you can change this around if you want. You can say, hello, my name is, and then you can put your name there. You can also type this out again. And if you run it, you'll see that it prints out everything. Okay, so that's basically the basics of printing and giving output. Now let's talk about variables. So variables, you might have heard of them in math, but if not, variables are basically used to store information. And you might be wondering like why this would be useful. Well, let's say, for example, you're coding an email system, right? And obviously, the user will give you like their, like when they're signing up, they'll give you their like username and password. Now, you'll need to store this information somehow, right? Because the next time they want to log in, you'll have to like make sure that their username and password exists. So you would use you could use variables to store this information essentially. So in our program, we can instead of printing hello, let's try and use a variable. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this first print statement. And the way we create a variable is by first typing the type, or using the type of our variable. So I guess for now, if we go back, there are different types of variables. So there's what's called a string, and this is like text. So there's letters, words, phrases, or sentences surrounded by quotation marks. Then there's integers, which is any number without a decimal point, and booleans that are true or false. There are several other types of variables, but for now, these are the ones that we'll be talking about. And yeah, so one good thing about variables is that we can change them whenever we want. So if we go back for a second, and let's try and use a variable. So we talked about how strings hold like words or phrases. And we see here that hello, so if we're trying to replace hello with a variable, we see that hello is like what we described for a string. It's surrounded by quotation marks. It's obviously a word. So the way we create a variable is by typing, so first type in string. So first we type in the type of our variable. And in this case, our type is a string. And then we can type in what we want to call it. So let's call it x. And then if we put an equal sign, and then quotation marks, and then hello. And you'll see that you'll get like a red squiggly mark underneath, and that's because we need to put in the semicolon at the end. Okay, yeah, so this is basically saying the variable called x, which is a string, and as we talked about, a string is like any type of words or sentences or phrases. So the string x is set to be equal to hello. So now, if I replaced hello with x and ran this program, you'll see that it says hello. So another way of thinking about variables is anything that's on the left of this equal sign is like a container, and anything on the right is basically like the content. So in this case, when the computer sees like this equal sign, it'll take whatever is on the right, in this case hello, and store it inside this variable. So in this case, it's x. So that means whenever we print out x, we're basically just printing out hello, because hello is like the actual information, and x is just the name of the variable. And this can be useful because, let's say, if I were to copy this line, let's print it out a few times. You'll see that if I run it, it'll print out hello 3 times. And I didn't have to say hello, hello, hello. I could just put in one letter, X. So it's like saving time, and it's also using less characters. So yeah. And yeah, as I discussed, the good thing about variables is that we can change them whenever we want. So if we go back and let's add one more print statement, just copy and paste it. Now, another good thing, so as we talked about, you can change variables whenever we want. So let's say now we decided that instead of printing hello, I want to print out bye. You'll see that if I change x to be bye and run it, it'll print out bye 4 times. So I only had to change it once. I didn't have to go through each print statement and change hello to bye. I just had to change it up here. So now if I replace it with hello again, you'll see that it prints out hello each time. Another good thing is that we can change them whenever we want. So let's say I want to print out hello only 3 times, and then in the end I want to print out bye. I could change this from x to bye, but another thing that I could do is if I kept it as x, I could now change my variable. So now, let's say I want x to equal bye. I can simply do x is equal to, and then in quotation marks, bye, and then put a semicolon at the end. And you'll notice that the main difference between this line and this line is that I didn't include this string. And the reason is because whenever you're changing your variable, you don't need to include that. Because the computer already knows that it's a string. Okay, so yeah, so if we run it, you'll see that I'll print out hello 3 times, and then I'll print out bye, because in this case, x is now bye. Okay, so right now our program is working, and it's giving out output to the user, and it's using variables. But one issue is that the user can't actually do anything. So you might be wondering, like, this is good, but it's not really like any game or any application in which the user can actually do something. And so let's try and implement that in our game. So let's see. So instead of just having it always print out hello or having it print out bye, let's have the user type something. So if we go back to our program, and yeah, instead of putting input, instead of typing that, what we do is type in scanner equals new scanner, and then in parentheses put system dot in, and at the very end put a semicolon. Now you'll see like red squiggly lines underneath this, and at the very left you should see like this like light bulb with like an X on it. If you click it, you should see like a bunch of different options. So it might say import scanner, it says import scanner again, creates class scanner. What you want to do is click on the one that has import scanner and then in parentheses java.util. And if you double click on it, you'll see that this new line appears up here. Alternatively, you could have just typed this in instead of like clicking over here. But yeah. Okay, and then if we type in on the next line, how about x is equal to scanner dot next line, and then 2 parentheses and then a semicolon at the end. Okay, now if we run this, and I'll explain what scanner is in a bit, and if we type in something, let's say goodbye, and then I click enter, you'll see that it'll print out goodbye instead of saying it'll basically print out what we typed in. So now the user can actually interact with the program. Okay, so in terms of what we did, the reason this works is because I'm not going to get too into detail since it is a bit complicated, and in future episodes we'll get be more specific about what this is exactly doing. But for now, just think of it as like a scanner is what takes an input, and we're just setting our variable x to be whatever the user inputs. So again, don't be too worried about what exactly is going on for the scanner, but just realize like what it's doing, and and realize how x changes to whatever the user inputs. Okay, so if we ran the program, you'll see that it doesn't actually do anything until we type something in. And that's because the computer's waiting for us to type something in because we're using the scanner. Okay, yeah, so I'll leave it here for this episode. We covered how to print stuff. We went over the background of Java. We installed Java. We talked about printing, scanners, and variables. And then in the next episode, we'll cover some more content. But for now, that's going to be it. If you enjoyed, please leave a like. And if you have any questions, leave it as a comment below. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.